Howdy, kare amigas. Koyu ale yao zuo sede. That means, good day, my dear friends. What do you all want to do today? Welcome to the third video in my lessons about Lidepla, Lingwa de Planeta. Just briefly, you may remember that in lesson 2 we introduced a bunch of verbs, including zuo, which means to do or make, and also the term zuo-werda, which means do word or an action verb. We also introduced yao, which is want, and pri, which is like, to like something. In today's lesson, I will introduce a couple more verbs and a couple more nouns as well, a couple more zuo-werda and quo-werda, do words and what words. But the heart of this lesson is going to be about getting into describing things, using adjectives to talk about what kind of thing you have or which thing you're talking about. Just briefly, before I get into that, let me introduce the verb razmi, which comes from Arabic and it means to draw, and the word pictura, which, as you can easily guess, means picture. And so you can talk about me razmi, I'm drawing. Me razmi pictura, I'm drawing a picture. I'm drawing pictures of the picture. And then we also had that serial verb construction last time, which is stringing verbs together. So you can do things like me yao razmi pictura, I want to draw a picture, or me pri razmi picturas, I like to draw pictures. Okay, we'll use that a little bit more later on. Another noun that I want to introduce is the word for house or home, which is dom, D-O-M, and it most directly comes from Russian, but it has roots in Latin as well. Think about words like domestic or domicile or domesticated. That'll be easy for you to remember. Think of those words. And I wanted to use dom to review the verb have, which is have. So you could say, me have dom, I have a house. Or, you have dom, you have a house. Of course, it's not as informative to just talk about, I have a house. You might want to know what kind of house. And so now we're getting into describing words or adjectives. I personally have a small house, and the word for small is xiao. S-Y-A-O, xiao, which comes from Chinese. Okay, so you could say, me have xiao dong. Okay, so what you notice there is that the describing word comes before the noun, generally. I mean, if you put it afterwards, if you said, me have dong xiao, people would understand, but the preference is to put it before. Okay. Now, I might want to talk about my friend who has a big house. You could say, lu have grandom. Okay. Big or large is gran, which comes basically from Spanish, French, Portuguese, like grand. Okay, so when you're really talking about that, you're actually asking, what kind of a house do you have? The word for what kind or which in Lidepla is quel. And it should be pretty familiar. It sounds like the French quel or the Spanish or Portuguese qual. Okay, so that's how you ask what kind or which. And not too surprisingly, the term for an adjective, for a describing word, in Lidepla is quel-werda. In other words, a which word or a what kind word. Because when you think about it, that's what adjectives do. They answer that question. Which one, or what kind, what type is it? Okay. So you could throw this into a question, just like any other question word. We've already had quo. You could talk about quel dom you have. What kind of house do you have, or which house do you have? And then somebody could answer, we have xiao dom. I have a small house. Okay, so those words, xiao and gran, are very useful, very important. A couple more quel-werda that are going to be used all the time are the words for good and bad. Now, I've been using the word for good informally at the beginning of every lesson, and that's how. Again, it comes from Chinese. Okay? So you could say, I have how dum, I have a good house. Okay. And we also talked about how you say not if you want to negate something, and that was bu. Throw that in front of the verb. And it works here too. If you want to say not good, you just say buhao. You can usually write it all together. And not good, of course, is bad. So we have how a buhao. Good and bad. Okay. So some examples using that. You might be talking with your friend who is drawing a picture. And you might ask her, Qual pictura juras-me? What kind of a picture are you drawing? And she might say, Me juras-me how pictura? I'm drawing a good picture. Or maybe she's not very confident about her drawing abilities. She might shake her head and say, Me juras-me buhao pictura? I'm drawing a bad picture. Or you could just say, Es how pictura, es buhao pictura. It's a good picture. It's a bad picture. Alright. The next little thing I wanted to introduce is words to point out. Okay, those are called indicative words or demonstrative words. You're pointing or you're demonstrating about something. These are the words in English that we use a lot when we talk about this or that. Okay, so maybe you want to talk about a book. Remember, a book is kitaba. So you could say, this book. The word for this is say. So, say kitaba. And you can throw that in with other things too. You could say kitaba es how. This book is good. Me prisi say kitaba. I like this book. I do happen to be a fan of Lovecraft, so I'd say, yeah. Say kitaba es how. You could talk about another book. Say kitaba es buhao. Actually, I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's all that good, if it's all that funny or not. Okay. Alright, you can talk about say dom, this house. Or say kitaba, say pictura, this picture. Alright? So that's if you say this. If you want to make a contrast and point out something else, in English we use that. And that in Lidepla is toy. Okay. So you could say kitaba es how? Toy kitaba es buhao. Okay, this, that. Alright. Now, you might wonder about how does that work with plurals. Okay, well, when you say kitaba, remember that kitaba by itself could be book or books. So if I say kitaba, I could be talking about both of these books. Okay, so without getting any more specific, kitaba could be this book or these books. But if I said kitabas, okay, well there I've thrown in the marker for plural. And so then it has to mean these books. Or I could say kitabas, those books. Right. While we're talking about plurals, I might as well go ahead and tell you the rule for how do you make a plural when you really want to show it. It's actually very simple, especially if you've studied Spanish. Okay, the rule is that if you have a word like kitaba that ends in a vowel, you simply throw an S on the end. So kitaba, kitabas, worda, wordas. Okay. Amiga is friend, amigas, friends. If you have a word that ends in a consonant, like dom or kalam, and you want to make it plural, you throw es on the end, exactly like in Spanish. So kalam, kalames. Okay, or domes. Alright. But remember that that is actually completely optional. It's kind of like in Turkish, actually. In Turkish, they have the same system where the word can be singular or plural, and you only mark it when you absolutely have to show that it's plural. If there's another word, like a number in front of it, then that already carries the meaning of plural. You don't have to say anything extra about that. Alright, so let's see how that would work with a few more words. Okay, let me throw in the other verb that I wanted to do in this lesson, and that's to see or to look at, which is vidi. Okay. That should be pretty easy to remember if you think of video or visual. This actually comes right out of Esperanto. It's the same word, vidi, to see. Of course, in Esperanto, the ending changes a little bit. Pretty simple, but this is even simpler. It just stays vidi. And what could you look at? Okay, you might look at a flower. And the word for flower is flor, right out of Spanish. Okay, so you could say, me vi de flor, I see a flower. Or it could be, I see flowers. Okay. And you could say, qual flor you vidi? What kind of flower do you see? Okay, so here's another quel word, another describing word, which is beautiful, which is gemile. So you could say, me vidi gemile flor. I see a beautiful flower, or I see beautiful flowers. Okay. If you wanted to talk about a lot of flowers, or a lot of anything, the word that you use is mucho. We've got a lot of Spanish in today's lesson because there's a lot of it that came into Lidepla. So you could say, I see a lot of flowers. Me vidi mucho flor. Notice there that the word mucho carries the idea of plural, so I don't have to say flores. Okay. If you wanted to say, I see a lot of beautiful flowers, me vidi mucho gemile flor. Okay. Notice that the gemile doesn't change either. Okay, so if you didn't put in mucho, if you just said, I see flowers, and you wanted to emphasize the plural, you'd say, me vidi gemile flores. I see beautiful flowers. Okay, this brings up one other good little point, which is that even if you're marking the plural, you don't change the adjective, you don't change the quel word, it just stays the same, it just stays gemile. Okay, we'll get into a lot more of that stuff in the next lesson, which will be about colors and numbers. Okay, and this one's starting to get a little bit long, so there's one other verb that I wanted to throw in here, which is to think or to think about, but I'll save that one for next time. So we've gotten an introduction to how to talk about what kind of things we've got. We got quel and quel word, and we also talked a little bit more about how that plays with verbs and nouns, and also how to point out things with say and toy, this and that, or these and those. Okay, so as always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. I would love comments, and if anything wasn't clear, please comment as well, and I will clear it up in the next lesson. Okay, until next time, swasti.